Everydayers will recall at the beginning of the season that I did think the Baltimore Orioles were en route to becoming yet another competitive team in the AL East. I mean, all we need, right? Another really good team in the AL East. My goodness. It's the reason for this. The AL East is the reason for this right here. My goodness. If you're watching on the podcast, pulling out my hair. I'm showing why I am so darn bald. My goodness. This AL East, too competitive. It's not just competitive, too competitive. Now, again, New Baltimore was coming, but I didn't think it was coming until next season. Well, they're off to a terrific start to this season in town this weekend as the Blue Jays conclude this 10-game homestand. And today on the Locked On Blue Jays, we'll get you set for that series, plus a bit more with our conversation with ESPN and MLB analyst Xavier Scruggs.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. I am indeed Locked On Blue Jays. I am indeed thankful that you're choosing to spend part of your day talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. And for those of you making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen every day, wow, I daydreamed that maybe one day might approach that Locked On Blue Jay podcast might approach the top 10 and by top 10 I mean like 10, right? Not in the top 10, 10 on the Apple podcast rankings. But my goodness, I've moved into the top 10. Just so thrilled and so thankful to you guys. I joke, but really I'm serious. You know, I mean, I'm thankful. I need you, and I'm thankful for you for helping the Locked On Blue Jay podcast grow. You know, you have friends or family members that are Blue Jay fans. Your Uber driver. You see you see somebody at the gas station. You name it. You see or you know a Blue Jay fan. Put the Locked On Blue Jay podcast in their hands so we can help this thing grow together. Thank you for that. Going to get you set for this weekend series. Again, later on in this episode, more from the conversation with Xavier Scruggs, so I'm excited about that. This Baltimore Oriole team that's in town right now, my goodness. Overall, big picture-wise, let's set the stage for this series here. Big picture-wise, Toronto Blue Jays have done very well against the Orioles over the years. 385 wins, 321 losses. In the 2020s, Blue Jays are 32-16 against the Orioles. Now, truth be told, it did get much tighter last season. Last season was just 10-9 for the Blue Jays against the Orioles. 22-7 the previous two seasons. That's where that domination comes from. Now, last season, the Blue Jays did win 8 of the last 11 meetings versus these two teams, so hopefully some momentum. But worth noting, that was on the heels of Baltimore winning 5 straight against the Blue Jays. So each team had the real, feast or famine against each other last season. This is at the Rogers Center. Now, the highlight that the best season the Blue Jays ever had versus the Orioles at the Rogers Center was 2018 when they went 10-0. Yes, please. Can we get a repeat of that again? No, they don't play them 10 times this season, but wow, I mean, 10-0. Wow. Fantastic. That was 2018. The Orioles, a lot has been made, and rightfully so, about how road heavy, how difficult, because it was been so road heavy, this Blue Jays schedule is early on. The Baltimore Orioles are right behind the Blue Jays for road games. I mean, I hate to say it, their schedule has been almost every bit as tough. Not level of competition, maybe some last place teams in there, but from a road schedule, Baltimore's been out on the road and they've been successful on the road. 13-8 in those 21 road games. My goodness, Baltimore's won 9 of their last 13 road games. Somehow this team has already faced 17 lefties this season. Wow, Blue Jays have faced 9, gone 5-4. We know they'll face Kikuchi, a lefty, in this series tonight. In fact, now Baltimore 12-5 this season versus lefties. Wow. Couple players that we're going to have our eyes on big time in this series. And one of them, unfortunately for Toronto Blue Jay fans, we've got to have our eye on this guy for the next 10 to 15 years. He is special. That's Orioles catcher Adley Rutschman. The Orioles just finished their 162nd game, so 162 games, one full season with Adley Rutschman since they called him up mid last season. They won 93 games during that span. I mean, that's a playoff team. You could really say, since the Baltimore Orioles brought up Adley Rutschman, despite my issues with their pitching staff, it hasn't mattered because Rutschman's done such a good job offensively and calling these games. He's been really good already for Baltimore. You could really legitimately say they've been a playoff team since he was called up. Wow. In Rutschman's rookie season, last season, he played all 9 games that Baltimore played at Rogers Center. Do you remember last season was a bit of a quirk in the schedule? All the American League East teams had already played Baltimore before the Jays even got their first taste of Baltimore. It was odd. All those games took place with Baltimore and the Blue Jays at the end of last season. So Rutschman was up on the big league level, played all 9 games that took place between Baltimore and Toronto at the Rogers Center. How about a 353 batting average at Rogers Center in those 9 games? How about a 439 on base percentage? Are you kidding me? And a .145 OPS. Holy moly. In those 9 games at Rogers Center, Adley Rutschman, 3 doubles, 3 home runs, 9 RBIs. Didn't I say got to keep 2 eyes on this guy? Last season, in his rookie season, he hit 4 home runs against the Toronto Blue Jays. Jays couldn't get him out. He hit 4 dingers versus the Blue Jays. His next highest team that he hit home runs against was 2. He owned the Toronto Blue Jays last season. Got to be wary of this guy. Got to have our eyes on this guy. And remember now, all those power numbers I just described at Rogers Center last season, of course, to state the obvious, was with the old dimensions. So who knows with these new dimensions, he may be even more of a beast. Very concerned about the matchups with Adley Rutschman this weekend. The other Baltimore Oriole, Ryan Mountcastle. I literally, I'm not even kidding about this. When I'm watching a Baltimore game and they're playing somebody else and Mountcastle hits a home run, I actually get excited. I actually get happy about it because it's just nice to see him hit a home run against somebody else other than your Toronto Blue Jays. This guy has 42 home runs in his career. 14 are against the Toronto Blue Jays. That's 33% of his dingers are against the Toronto Blue Jays. Like, leave us alone, Ryan Mountcastle. My goodness. Now, glass half full. Only 5 of those 14 home runs were at Rogers Center. Again, we'll have to see what happens with the new dimensions. And in his career versus the Toronto Blue Jays, Ryan Mountcastle is a .323 hitter, .381 on base percentage, 1.014 OPS. I mean, my goodness. Now, again, much better against the Blue Jays in Baltimore, and this series, of course, taking place in Toronto, but still, Adley Rutschman, Ryan Mountcastle, going to have to be wary of both of these gentlemen all weekend. Coming up on Locked On Blue Jays, once again going to be joined by Xavier Scruggs from ESPN and the MLB Network as we talk Blue Jays, Orioles, plus talk George Springer with Xavier Scruggs and Robo Umps. And if you're an everydayer, you know I've discussed Robo Umps in the past. I am Robo Umps yesterday. Please and thank you. Now, our new sponsor, So Rare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. Now, unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, SoRare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. And win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next-level competitions and rewards. SoRare MLB game weeks happen twice weekly and span a 3 or 4 day cycle. At the end of the game weeks, SoRare MLB managers who rank at or near the top of their leaderboards win a variety of rewards, which can include SoRare scarcity cards, game tickets, merchandise, signed jerseys, VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars. Pretty cool. Now, prizes may vary depending on the competition. Head to SoRare.com/lockedon. That's SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's SoRare.com/lockedon to start playing today. Boy, Xavier, I feel upset. I almost want to say I'm almost insulted that the Baltimore Orioles have gotten themselves in the thick of things in the AL East. You know, it was only a couple seasons ago where they were an easy victory, and I significantly preferred that world. Now, I saw, don't get me wrong, I saw Baltimore coming, but Xavier, full disclosure, I thought it was next season. I didn't like their starting pitching this season. I'm very surprised at how well they've done. Now, they're in town for the first time. The Blue Jays will see them coming up this weekend. I noticed Steve Phillips was saying the other day on the MLB Network with you there that the Orioles would be the third wildcard team, and you seem to be very surprised by that, X. It sounds like you're expecting even better from this Baltimore Oriole team this season.
Well, I do expect better from the rotation. That's one area in which the ERA has not really stood out. I even think about, I go back as far as last night, Grayson Rodriguez. I think he's going to continue to be better. Last night wasn't a great outing from him against the Angels, but I look at the starting rotation can be better. And if not extremely better, this team, if they're in position, I believe that they'll go out and get some help. That's the one area in which they could use it. The bullpen has been really good. The offense has been good. And I think even Adley Rutschman can still hit his stride a little bit more. So I don't want to say this team is the best team in the division or even the second best team, but what I will say is I'm not surprised that they're competing at the level that they're at right now. And I think that even with them not going out and getting maybe the help that a lot of the fans wanted them to this offseason, I felt like they still had a solid roster in which young guys are continuing to develop. I think about the Austin Hayes, I think about the Santanders, obviously the Adley Rutschman, the Mullins, the Jorge Mateo. Those guys are continuing to push the issue for the Orioles. And I think there's a different expectation with this team. So that helps the division become that much more competitive as well.
That's such a great point too about the trade deadline, what they could do. Because you sort of alluded to it. I thought the general managers and the management team made sort of big predictions of what they would do in the offseason, and it didn't really come to fruition. But I wonder if that was just from happenstance, because they really thought they would spend that money. It didn't work out now. But Xavier, that means that money's still sitting in their back pocket for something big at the trade deadline. So you could be onto something there. Just before we move off of Baltimore, because I'm just so impressed. Yeah. I saw the other day, Adley Rutschman, he completed a couple days ago. They had their 162nd game, so a full season, essentially, with Adley Rutschman, and they won 93 games over that time. I mean, with expanded playoffs, Xavier, you're winning 93 games. So basically, I think you could say, since Adley Rutschman touched down on the big league level, Baltimore's been a playoff team. And to your point, is this guy even... Is Adley Rutschman even the Adley Rutschman we're going to see going forward? Like, isn't there room to grow for this guy? So I'm very impressed with him. I think he's going to be a problem for Toronto Blue Jay baseball for the next decade in Baltimore. Would love to get your thoughts, because that's one of the things you said earlier, right? That's one of the best parts about this job. Now I can deep dive several different other players. My guess is Adley Rutschman has caught your eye. My guess is you've got some thoughts on Adley Rutschman.
No, definitely. I mean, anytime a young player can affect a team the way that Adley Rutschman has, and I think that's a lot of credit to his preparedness when it comes to the major league level, from a catching standpoint, game strategy, being able to receive the baseball, but then also the ability to kind of close off one side, right? Whether it be the catching and then going and hitting at the level in which he does, and then vice versa. So I think about the mental capacity to do that as a young player on a team that's playing good baseball, a team that really needs him to play well. I think that's huge. And then also I think about it shows the effect that he's had on this rotation, on this bullpen as well. Yeah. This has never been a rotation that was stand out, right? But if it's not a standout rotation, the catcher has to be that much better to make sure that everything is on plan when it comes to the strategy, when it comes to pitch calling. I think those things are so important and sometimes overlooked. And he's obviously given this team a jolt of energy, right? Anytime you get a young player that can come up and almost be a veteran presence in the middle of the order, you're going to give that team a lot of energy in that atmosphere.
It was so cool when he first came up and he just took in that moment. You see the Yankees with guys like Anthony Volpe, all these young guys coming up. They seem so enjoyable, X. So man, it's harder and harder to be a hater in this division these days. So I'm not happy over here. But Xavier, you sort of lead me into the next player I wanted to talk about, because that is George Springer. Because on MLB Off Base the other day, you guys were debating best leadoff hitters, and Mookie Betts, of course, in there. Cedric Mullins, speaking of Baltimore, right? Of course, got to be in there. Acuna Jr. probably gets my vote. They were just in town, Atlanta, this last weekend. He is just incredible. No mention of George Springer, nor should there have been for 2023. But X, coming into 2023, I mean, shouldn't he have been in this conversation? He's really scuffling right now.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is just us not seeing the power production, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's usually, even if he's off a little bit, we still see him hitting home runs every now and then. And that just has not been the case. I don't know if it's more of a getting back to using the right center. Usually the case for Springer is when he's going opposite field really well, he's usually on. And the same is for Bo Bichette. When that dude starts using that right side, it's game over. So if Springer can get back to that, we know he's an elite hitter. We understand that this is a guy that he has his streaks. He's a streaky hitter as well. I don't expect anything less than what we've seen year after year, though. I think it's just a slow start for him. He'll get back to doing the things he does. But it is weird, especially in a time in which this East is extremely tough division. You want to have most of your guys going, and he's the catalyst at the top of the order. They got to get him going strong.
I love how you mentioned, I really thought that was a big part of why he signed with the Blue Jays, is because his power stroke to right center played at the Rogers Center. And that was pre-renovations, moving that fence in. So I would absolutely beg him to get back to that stroke. I love that. Xavier, I want to ask you about some of we were touching earlier on the Rob Manfred changes. Xavier, you did not have one conversation last season with somebody where you asked, and you're watching all the baseball games, so pick any game where you said, "Hey, did you see the Rangers game, or whatever game last night?" And you did not have one person last season or recently say to you, "Oh, I was trying to watch the game last night, but man, in the fifth inning, the pitcher threw over to first base 3 times. I mean, I'm out. Oh, geez, I tried to watch the game. The bases are too far apart. I mean, I'm out." You didn't hear any of that. But Xavier, what you heard left, right, and center, what I heard left, right, and center, and unfortunately, what we continue to hear left, right, and center was that game was almost unwatchable last night because the home plate umpire was atrocious. Yeah. Xavier, how are all these changes coming to the game and Robo Umps is not amongst them? I am Robo Umps yesterday, and I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think, the one I'll give MLB the benefit of the doubt with the Robo Umps because I think that, and to your point, that they should be here, right? We should be at a point in which every other big sport is where technology has given them an opportunity to let errors go away pretty much. And I think obviously the home plate umpires where we see the most errors within a game when it comes to the strike zone. So what I will do is I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because this is a system that you want to be right as much as possible. You want it to make sure that it's put into play in a seamless manner. And I think that over the past couple of years, they're trying to find a way to do that. And so when the system is actually here, which I'm in favor for, just like you are, because I want it to be right. I think that it should be that way. So hopefully the delay in which it has come results in it being more of a seamless process. Okay. But I'm on the same page with you. Let's get it right. I don't want to see Aaron Judge have to get frustrated every time there's a ball thrown at his shins. Yeah. I won't go too far because obviously that was off your Blue Jays, but that's just we want to get it right.
No, no. As a side note, he's so difficult to umpire. I almost give umpires some leeway there because he's so difficult to umpire, but it's just so consistently. Xavier, what I don't get, and I won't rant on this. We'll move on here. But what I don't get is since baseball was established, there's a defined strike zone. So I just don't get why we allow human interpretation of the strike zone day in and day out. But anyway, I'll digress. Xavier, this was an absolute blast. Where can the good people follow your work and follow you on social media?
Yeah, Xavier Scruggs on Instagram. I think Xavier underscore Scruggs on Twitter and YouTube, TikTok. But really, I'm going pretty much every day on MLB Network on Off Base at 4 p.m. Eastern. I also do ESPN Baseball Tonight on Sundays. So come through there. But, I'm enjoying talking baseball on many different platforms. If you follow me on any of those, shoot me a DM. I love to talk baseball through the DMs and hear other people's perspectives because that's what makes me do my job better is when I get to hear perspectives from you, from everybody that enjoys this game as much as I do.
I really appreciate you stopping by, Xavier. Hopefully we'll do that again.
You.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up on the Locked On Blue Jays podcast, we'll look at the pitching matchups for this weekend's Blue Jays Orioles weekend series. Now, first, I want to talk about a new sponsor we've got here, Bird Dog Soft and Stretchy Pants and Shorts. Now, I've got 2 Bird Dog shorts, and I can tell you some of the things that I like about them. The fit. Honestly, I feel better. I feel like I look really good wearing these shorts, if I do say so myself. Now, comfort. The stretchy fabric makes my legs look great, and they're comfier than my other shorts. They've become my most worn shorts already very early on in me having them. And the versatility. I mean, Bird Dog shorts and pants, they give you the freedom to wear one pair of shorts or pants there on the golf course, to a meeting, a date, and hanging out with friends. I mean, you name it. Comfortable, and they look great. And I like the colors they've got there as well. So go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb, and when you enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, they'll throw in a custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. Hey, can I show you? I've got mine right there. Now let's get into the pitching matchups this weekend for Blue Jays Orioles. We've got a real good idea of who the probable starters are, so let's deep dive. Friday night for your Toronto Blue Jays, Yusei Kikuchi. Now, yes, he's coming off his worst start of the season. He didn't even make it out of the 5th inning, allowed a by far season high 3 home runs. Now, I mean, truth be told, didn't have any walks and struck out 7, right? So there actually was some goodness to that start. And, it is true to say it was his worst start of the season, but it wasn't as bad as some of the things we saw from him last season, right? That's my glass half full attempt there. Now, we talked about the Baltimore earlier that they faced 17 lefties already this season. It's pretty remarkable. They're 12-5 against lefties. I mean, wow, extremely impressive. Extremely impressive. And we talked about Ryan Mountcastle, Blue Jays killer. Well, he's 4 for 9 in his career versus Yusei Kikuchi, and the 4 hits are a double and 3 home runs. Oh boy. Adley Rutschman, talked about him as well. Going to have to watch him all series long. This kid is special. Just 1 for 7 against Yusei, but worth mentioning the 1 hit was, you guessed it, a home run. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Now, a couple of prominent Orioles at the top of their lineup there, Cedric Mullins and Austin Hayes, advantage Yusei Kikuchi. At least it has been so far in his career. Cedric Mullins and Austin Hayes combined just 4 for 21 with 7 strikeouts against Yusei. On the mound for Baltimore, their big free agent signing in the offseason, Kyle Gibson, 4-3 record, ERA at 4.67, hasn't been great. Now, the odd thing is that the Orioles are 0-3 in Gibson's May starts, but the really odd part about that is they've lost, when Gibson's been on the mound in May, the Orioles lost 6-0, they lost 3-0, they lost 4-0. Haven't scored a run with this guy on the mound yet in May. Let's absolutely hope that continues. Okay. Looking for something to get Matt Chapman's dormant bat. I mean, he's just been incredibly bad in May. Looking for something to get him going. I really doubt that Kyle Gibson offers the cure for what ails Matt Chapman. Chapman just 2 for 15 in his career against Gibson. Now, Gibson was a longtime Minnesota a Twin, and of course, Whit Merrifield, a longtime Kansas City Royal. So they were in the same division, faced each other many times over the seasons. 10 for 14, Whit is against Gibson, but all 10 were singles. So hard to get excited there. Now, something to get excited about. Vlad, Dalton Varsho, and Danny Jansen, these 3 batters have owned Kyle Gibson over the course of their career. A combined 11 for 19. That's a 579 batting average. Is that good? Wow, for those 3 against him. Let's turn our attention to Saturday now. 3:07 p.m. first pitch, Eastern, of course, and of course you can catch that on Sirius XM. Alek Manoah's turn in the rotation. Now, many are wondering if the Blue Jays will sit him or what will happen. I actually do think that Manoah will pitch on Saturday. I actually think it's the right thing to do as well. Jose Barrios had the worst ERA in baseball last season at 5.27. Well, Manoah's currently at 5.40, so he's currently on pace for even worse than what we saw from Barrios last season. We don't even need to deep dive anything with Alek Manoah. We're completely well aware of what his struggles have been. Nothing has been recognizable from Alek Manoah so far in 2023. Now, could the Baltimore Orioles be the cure for what ails Alek Manoah? He's absolutely dominated them in the past. Now, Ryan Mountcastle won't surprise you. He's got a couple home runs against Manoah. I mean, he's got a couple home runs against all the Blue Jay pitchers. But current Orioles, they've combined to just have 23 hits and 34 strikeouts versus Alek Manoah. Domination. Current Orioles hitting just 204 versus Alek Manoah. Come on, Alek. Let's get that going. Let's get that going on Saturday. Grayson Rodriguez, the rookie, one of the top pitching prospect in baseball, on the mound for Baltimore, off to a 2-1 start since being called up. His ERA is at 6.5, though. But worth mentioning that this will be his 9th start. The Orioles have won 6 of his first 8 starts. Oh boy. He's only had 2 road starts. One was great and one was awful. So which one are we cheering for on Saturday, right? A repeat of the awful, obviously. You're going to like that fastball. It's in the high 90s, so it looks good. But I'll say this: that fastball is getting rocked. That cut fastball from Grayson is getting rocked as well. His secondary pitches, his changeup, slider, and curve, they've all been really good. But if you're the Blue Jays, have to be looking to do damage to Grayson Rodriguez's fastball on Saturday afternoon. When Rodriguez is on, he's at the bottom of the strike zone, which induces a lot of ground balls. That's a problem for the Toronto Blue Jays. Sunday in the finale, 1:37 p.m. Eastern, first pitch, Kevin Gausman, just 2-3 on the season. Blue Jays 4-5 in his starts, and they've lost all 3 of Gausman's May starts. Oh boy. Had 2 starts versus the Orioles last season, 1 home, 1 away. The one at home, he was absolutely rocked. Touched up for 7 runs, didn't make it out of the 3rd inning. And if you remember that game as well, you're going to be very upset because Rougned Odor had a big RBI hit. Oh boy, never mind. No, sac fly, I think. I don't think it was an RBI hit, but he drove in a run. What a 4-letter word in Blue Jay lore he is, right? Now, current Orioles roster, got to tell you, it's owned Kevin Gausman. 31 for 86 combined. That's a 360 batting average. Now, there is only 1 home run in there, so hopefully that's some glass half full. It was Anthony Santander. But man, yeah, Gosman going to have to be better than he's been. Remember, he was a former Baltimore Oriole, going to need to be better at home against Baltimore than he has been in the past. Dean Kramer goes for the Orioles. 5-1 record, impressive, but the ERA is just a smidge under 5. Not impressive. Now, we talked about the Blue Jays have lost all 3 of Gosman's May starts, while Baltimore's won all 3 of Kramer's May starts. Now, opponents are hitting .321 versus Kramer on the road. Oh, boy, that sounds exciting. And I'll say this is a day game, 1:37 p.m. Eastern, first pitch, right? Day game. This will be his 4th day start. In the previous 3, absolutely rocked. His day ERA is just under 10. Now, he's had success against a lot of these Blue Jays in the past, right? We're going to have to acknowledge that. George Springer just 1 for 13. Bo just 2 for 14. Matt Chapman 0 for 10. So there's 3 of your first 4 hitters combined. 3 for 37 against Dean Kramer. Whoa. Who's the other one? Right? We hope Vlad getting healthier and healthier. Well, Vlad has 4 home runs in his career against Kramer. He's done well against Kramer. Blue Jays need a great weekend to close out this homestand. Remember now, it's Tampa Bay, at the House of Horrors for the Toronto Blue Jays. They're at the Trop Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then they go to Minnesota for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, by the way. Very difficult 7-game road trip coming up here. We saw what a nightmare that previous 9-game road trip was. And 4 at Tampa Bay. Wow. So Jays need to close out this homestand positively. Now, that's going to do it for Friday's Locked On Blue Jays. Reminder that Locked On Blue Jays is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. And you can take in all the games this weekend on SiriusXM. Now, the last 2 Fridays, I've ended by saying that I hope your weekend is full of Toronto Blue Jay victories. Well, they've swept the last 2 weekends. So again today, on this Friday, I say, I hope your weekend is full of Toronto Blue Jay victories.